Another year, another list. Welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be ranking the top 10 games I played in 2025. Well, 2025 was a harsh year for everyone. It did produce some banger-ass games, and I'm going to talk about 10 of them at length. I have a lot to say this time, so buckle up. The rules this year are similar to previous years. I have to have started playing the game in 2025, no matter what the release date is. I don't have to have finished it, but having finished it usually makes it rank higher. Fan games, parts or sections of ongoing games, anything is fair game as long as I played it in 2025. By the way, I played most of these games live on stream, so consider checking me out over on Twitch or subscribing to the channel for each game's dedicated videos. Now with all that out of the way, let's get started. I lied! Before we start, I want to do something new to the Khepri channel. 2025 was such a good year for me in games that I'd feel bad leaving them out of this video. So let's do it Watch Mojo style. Lightning round, honorable mentions. I'll give them very brief thoughts on the game, then move on to the next. This is completely unordered, it's just games that didn't make the cut. Kirby Air Riders. Don't get me wrong, this game is fun, and it's amazing how much content is in this game for a modern Nintendo game, which is sad to say, but it's fun. It's a fun game. That being said, it is a bit simple for my liking. Like, it just feels simple. Well, I had a lot of fun with it. After I finish playing it and I don't want to play it anymore, I'm not going to remember anything about this game. I'm not going to come back to this game for like a replay or like to play it competitively like I do Smash. It's just kind of simple. Still, I had fun with it, so it gets a place on these honorable mentions. The Off remake. Listen, it's fun to see where Undertale's inspirations came from, and this game is decent, and the music is really good, of course. It just didn't stick with me as much as I'd like to. While the meta-narrative stuff was cool, the main plot just didn't stick with me, and it was kind of confusing. Kill Cure Prologue. I love the character designs and the personalities. This certainly does feel like a Danganronpa, and I think the characters are pretty cool. The kill/cure system is also pretty cool, and will certainly lead to new twists in the trials, and makes this fangan different from every other fangan I've seen. However, it's just the prologue. We don't get enough time to get to know any of the characters well enough, and there's no trials or anything in this prologue, so I don't know what the quality of the trials in this game is going to be until I witness the first one. So it's certainly a good setup for an interesting Danganronpa, but we'll have to wait and see before I decide to give my opinion on it, and for that reason, it's only hitting the honorable mentions. Kumitante. Again, it's a good setup for a good fangan. I love the unique aesthetic of the, like, old Japanese cartoons and grainy filter and all that. That's really cool. The card battling system is also unique too, and I can't wait to see what they do with that during the trials, but again, this is only the prologue. While the characters seem like they're cool, we really don't get enough time to know them, and because there's no actual mystery in this prologue, I just feel that I can't judge it on its writing yet, which is why I can't rank it in the top 10, but I can't wait to see where this goes. And yeah, that's basically gonna wrap up the honorable mentions, so I hope you enjoyed that lightning round, and now let's move on to the top 10 proper. Do you ever have a game that, on paper, you should hate? A game you should absolutely despise that has everything going against it, and yet there's something about it you can't just help but love. A game that has some of your least favorite aspects in gaming in it, but yet a game that you love nonetheless. This was me with this game. was a trip. I wobbled back and forth on how much I enjoyed it as I played, because basically everything I dislike about this game is the actual gameplay, while the parts I do like are the presentation and story. This game is the grindiest single-player game that I've ever played. There is so much grinding that you have to do for just one piece of equipment, and the drop rates are near zero. You can run around for hours and not find the specific thing you need, and that really pissed me off. Due to the nature of this game, your equipment is just as important as your level, and so you're required to grind for that equipment, and it's not as simple as just beating hundreds of enemies, it's beating hundreds of thousands of enemies. I don't like grinding in games. I get it's a staple of the RPG genre to necessitate grinding, but every RPG I enjoy playing does something to mitigate the grind, while this game necessitates it to an almost obsessive degree. Like, they had to know what they were doing here, right? To be honest, it took the wind out of my sails every time I thought the plot was getting interesting. All the wind would be taken out due to the grinding. I also think that the gameplay outside of grinding is poor. The combat is fine and even fun, and I had fun with the combat and especially with the PvP battles against Apollo. I wish there were more of those because those were the most fun I had with the combat system. The bosses were fun when they weren't shoving puzzles in your face and required you to think on your toes, and I really enjoyed that. It's the puzzles that I had a problem with. I get what they were going for, but the puzzles just pissed me off. The jump puzzles were tough. I don't think platforming works well as a mechanic in top-down games like this, and this game's jumping system is especially bad. Your shadow is barely visible, making it hard to judge where you're going to land, and instead of jumping being mapped to a button, it's made that you jump automatically when you jump off an edge. This makes it very difficult to judge how far you're going to jump, and makes landing precisely on smaller platforms difficult. The ball puzzles are take it or leave it. Some are fun to do, and I like how the game consistently throws new gameplay elements at you, but for some of these puzzles, it requires a degree in trigonometry to figure out how you're supposed to solve them. No, the diagonal wall was not conveniently placed. It might just be a skill issue, but damn, I really couldn't wrap my head around how some of these puzzles were supposed to work. I also felt that the time puzzles, such as the bubbles and ice cubes, despawn way too quickly, and that instead of it despawning, there should be a button to reset the puzzle, because goddamn, the timing for some of these puzzle elements are far too tight. So, if I dislike a video game's gameplay, why is it on the list? If I like the story and characters, I can just read a book, right? Well, yes, but I prefer experiencing stories through the medium of video games, to the point where even if I dislike the gameplay, if the story sticks in my mind, I'll still enjoy the game overall, and that's how I felt with Crosscode. The art in this game is pretty good. I really like the character design, and the pixel art style was really fun to look at. It could even look stunning at some points. The music is also really good, although I wish there was just more than one main battle theme, but the music was enjoyable and fun to listen to. Not anything to write home about, but it's still really good for what it is. The game's strong suit is really its characters and story. The story overall is really good. It sets up and pays off mysteries really well, and it makes me intrigued as to what's going to happen next. I'm always anxious. I'm always hoping that all of my favorite characters will make it out of situations okay. Even when the story slows down somewhat, such as during the Track of the Ancient quest, it gives me time to think about the overarching plot, who I trust and distrust, and what might be going on. The only times I actively get taken out of the plot is when I have to grind. The world they've made is truly interesting, and the fact that it's an MMO on a real planet is interesting. I haven't beaten the game as of writing, but I'm excited to see where the story goes. But the best part of this game is its characters. The characters are really endearing, especially Lee. For a character of so few words, writing a compelling character arc goes entirely into her sprites and body manner. And this really works with her. You feel her enthusiasm and love for her friends just through her expressions. Her sad face and her smug face were some of my favorite Lee expressions, and they sell her character really well. They make her motivations well known without resorting to having another character speak for them, which is unfortunately common for mute characters in fiction. The other characters are really good too. They're all fun to talk to and they bounce off of Lee and they fill the void of dialogue that Lee leaves. Emily is by far my favorite character in the game. She's really thoughtful, I loved the arc she goes through, and she's just a really endearing companion for Lee throughout the whole game, while being her own character and having her own motivations. I cried over the divorce arc and later the reunion in Chapter 8. When do they kiss? The characters bounce off each other naturally, and their typical banter was one of my favorite aspects of the game. I really like that they have unique dialogue for every single enemy in the game, but it's optional and out of the way in the bottom corner, so you aren't forced to read it. But if you do, it builds their characters so much and really works well, and it's funny. I really like stopping to read it and see what my party members had to say. Overall, Crosscode made me cry multiple times. It drew me in with its engaging plot and stellar cast of characters, especially Leah and Emily, to the point where I can excuse the tedious and frustrating gameplay. When a game makes me cry multiple times and draws emotion out of me, that's a good game in my book. When a story hooks you in, that's really something that can't be replaced, and it's something I appreciate about Crosscode. However, because its gameplay is so poor in my eyes, I'm only putting it at number 10. Ace Attorney is a good game series, however, I never really got into it. I just thought it's far less entertaining than Danganronpa or other visual novels I've played, like Zero Escape. But you know what makes everything better? That's right, Yuri. I'm not joking, by the way. This game is basically Toxic Yuri Ace Attorney, and I fucking adore it. I love me some Toxic Yuri every once in a while, and a lot of these popular rival tropes are always yaoi, Phoenix and Miles, Akechi and Joker, fucking Hajime and Nagito, I guess. So, it's nice to have a game that puts that archetype of ship into a Yuri setting. I love women. My only problem with this game is the gameplay. For the same reason I dislike Ace Attorney, I dislike Of the Devil's gameplay, and that is that there's nothing to break up the visual novel segments. Like, Danganronpa has the trial minigame, Zero Escape has the escape rooms, etc. While Of the Devil has kind of minigames, they just come down to selecting dialogue options or interrupting at the right point, and while that's alright, it makes the gameplay kind of a slog compared to other mystery games. But this game's way of presenting its gameplay is much more entertaining than Ace Attorney. The gambling coat of paint and framing device adds so much charm and personality to the gameplay and story that Ace Attorney just doesn't have, and I love that the minigames follow this gambling aesthetic. Maybe I'm just a sucker for this vaporwave-esque aesthetic, but that combined with the music choices, I think the aesthetic adds a lot more to make the gameplay entertaining. The character designs are really sharp and edgy. I love the black outlines around the character sprites and the shadow of their specific color behind them, and they just look so much more interesting than Ace Attorney's characters. Honestly, the aesthetic and especially the character designs might be my favorite part of the game. I just love how every character looks and the gambling aesthetic for the whole game. The mysteries themselves are also fun. I really enjoyed the twists and turns the mysteries took. Murder mysteries in games are always fun to solve, and while the murders aren't as tricky as Danganronpa's wacky trials, it's still fun to solve and makes sense, and this is only the first trial. But more than the trials themselves, I'm even more interested in the overarching plot and character arcs. I already touched on the main protagonist and the antagonist's Toxic Yuri rivalry, which is always fun to watch, and their interactions are always entertaining. Morgan and Emma should kiss to resolve their differences, for real, for real. But more than that, I love the themes of this game, of androids, and how they're being treated in this world, and of a surveillance state, and of Sarah and her arc throughout episode 1. She ended up being one of my favorite parts of the game's story. Sarah's just so wholesome and daughter-coded. I will protect her with my life. But you know who sure won't? Morgan. I love the dynamic of a defense attorney secretly being a notorious serial killer. That's such an interesting dynamic that they kept bringing up just when you're about to forget about it, and I hope the game does more with it. I think it's such an interesting dynamic, and it brings a breath of fresh air to being a defense attorney, making it interesting. And it builds anxiety, especially when Sarah, the most wholesome character in the game, works as Morgan's legal assistant and completely believes in her and her act, growing to trust her. It makes you anxious as to when that shoe is going to drop, and how Sarah will react, and how Morgan will betray Sarah. It made me excited for future episodes. It's a really good hook, and I love that. I can't wait to see how the story continues. Overall, while not the most interesting gameplay-wise, the overarching plot, character arcs, and aesthetic makes Of the Devil a really, really good game. The only reason it's down this low is because I like the other games so much better. Should ongoing games that release chapters at a time count for this list? I believe they do. And again, I'm kind of cheating with this one because I played it back in 2024, but after I finished editing the video for that year, so I'm counting it towards this year. My review for this section is going to be short. This chapter of Witch's Heart carries a lot over from previous chapters, which I reviewed back in 2023, and I just don't want to repeat everything I said then. I'm just glad we got a new segment of the game, because Witch's Heart is a really compelling, fun little indie game. I really like how all of these conclusion chapters are their own stories, completely separate from the other ones. It really allows each character to get a story that focuses on them and them alone. Thus, across the 4 stories, it'll give each of them ample screen time. However, this story is focused on a single character. But let's start with the negatives first. The negatives from this section are carried over from the other parts of the games. While the combat is bare bones and the music, while good and amazing, is all stock music, what you're really here for in Witch's Heart is the story and the characters, and for Willardo's conclusion, it puts a lot more focus on the characters rather than the story. Like previous parts, the game has you do menial tasks between story points to pad out the game artificially. Furthermore, the hints on where you need to go can be cryptic, and it's hard to find out what to do next. But those are the main downsides to the game, and as I said in 2023, if you're going into Witch's Heart expecting a well-designed video game, you're going about it wrong. Easily, the best part of this Witch's Heart chapter is the characters. Of course, the main focus is on Willardo, but each of the other characters get ample screen time, and it's fun to see all of them interact again. The character interactions are some of my favorite parts of this game, and there's so many emotional, fun, exciting, or sad character moments and relationships shared. Claire and Ziesel, Claire and Invective, Willardo and Claire, Willardo and Noelle, all of these relationships really shine. And of course, the 2 endings are as tragic and heartfelt as Willardo deserves. For a character with a fate like Willardo's, the ending really meant something important to me. Either continuing to live his immortal life for the people around him, or sacrificing himself so he can finally get the rest he deserves. Both endings are as heartfelt and as amazing as each other, and both could work as the finale for Willardo's story. Both endings feel equally narratively impactful, and I really liked that. Again, I'm going to try to keep this segment short because I talked about this game at length in 2023, and you can always go watch that. However, one thing I did want to talk about is Claire's fate. In the original Witch's Heart game, It kept you on the edge of your seat, wanting to find a perfect solution to Claire's issues that just never came. It was really a selling point for me, trying and failing over and over and over to save Claire. While Willardo's conclusion tries to retain this anxiety and worry about Claire, the fact that you know that this is the ending and that means that Claire will likely survive kind of reduces this factor a bit. That being said, they use the threat of Claire's death in order to further Willardo's character, and I kind of like that. Either way, the story remains exciting and gripping the whole time, and it's really fun to see how these characters' fates end up. As an epilogue to the story, it brings Claire's arc to a satisfying conclusion while being the perfect send-off for Willardo in both endings, and that is why it gets ranked on this list. I'm not a huge Metroidvania person. Running around an open map just isn't fun, and not knowing where to go isn't as enjoyable for me. I like to have a structure to the game, and then be distracted by things along the way, you know? That's why I like Breath of the Wild so much. So when I have fun with a game so open-ended and without direction like this, you know it's a good game. When it comes to games with 7-year-long dev cycles, you have to ask yourself, was it worth the wait? For me, personally, no, but it's a personal taste for me. I like Silksong. It wouldn't be on here if it wasn't a masterpiece of a game, but I do have my problems with it, and it just comes down to personal taste. The things I dislike about this game is essentially everything I disliked about Hollow Knight, but it was doubled down with in this game. First of all, the map system. I dislike that you have to build your own map and that you don't know where secret places are. In Metroid, you get a map and you have it. You might not know how to move around it, but you have the whole map. In Silksong, there are places the game straight up doesn't tell you about, and while this is supposed to reward exploration, the reward can vary from something super useful like a mass shard to something less useful like a frayed rosary string. It makes a lot of these secret rooms feel like a letdown, and makes exploring the world confusing rather than fun. Second is the boss runbacks. Listen, I'm fine with the difficulty of the game. I'm fine with the double damage, and throwing my face into a boss over and over and over until I learn the patterns is fun for me. The problem is that, for a lot of these bosses, the nearest respawn point feels miles away. The original game had this problem too, but this game just doubles down and makes them longer. I don't want to traverse a whole area I've already traversed, fight the same enemies just to instantly die to the boss again due to how hard it is. It makes it so that when you die on the way to a stupid mistake and lose all your rosaries, it just hurts. Just put a bench outside the boss rooms, it's that easy. Finally, my third and largest problem with this game is how grindy it is. Everything costs money in this game. Benches and fast travel station cost money, maps cost money, and even then you don't get any markers for it, even yourself on the map, without spending more money. If you don't have the money to get a map when you find the map seller, you're up shit's creek without a paddle. Furthermore, the tools, which you'll be using a lot of in the many attempts at the difficult boss fights, cost its own separate currency to fix, meaning you have to go grind every time you run out. It gets to a point where it gets super annoying, especially because the prices for some of the side quests get so high later in the game, and everything costs money. Just exploring to find rosary strings isn't fast enough to meet the game's demands. The most efficient method to get rosaries is to grind. Is this game an allegory for capitalism? I've done a lot of complaining, so why is this game so high on the list? Well, I think that Silksong excels at many things, so many things that it outweighs the bad. If you're using an online interactive map and know where everything is, this game instantly becomes 10 times as fun for me, because the game becomes about min-maxing when you're visiting a place and trying to get as much as you can in one place and planning trips so that you can grab as much as you can in one trip. I think that aspect was really fun and only came because I used an outside map, so I think it was entertaining. If I played this game blind, I don't think I'd like this game nearly as much as I do, because parts of this game's design actively hate the player, but when you're aware of the bullshit that this game throws at you, exploring becomes a lot more fun. But again, I understand that this is totally a personal preference thing. It's just how I like my games. I know that other people like the feeling of exploring, even if it stabs them in the back sometimes. I talked about the difficulty briefly, but I actually like the difficulty outside of the boss runbacks. It's hard, but fair. It makes every death seem kind of your fault, and even if I rage at my many deaths, I still have fun trying over and over. Each death feels like you might have to start over, but you learn something. This is especially the case with most of the bosses. The bosses are masterfully designed and fun to learn the patterns of and find the right time to strike or to heal. I just wish I didn't have to run back every time I died. But the bosses wouldn't be as amazing as they are if it weren't for the combat and movement system. While I'm mad about the need to grind for tools to make new ones, the tools are really fun to use in combat, and they offer such a variety of different ways to play the game. It's nice to have things to fill out your moveset. But more than the tools, it's even more fun to fight bosses needle only, or at least relying less on tools. The way Hornet moves around with the needle is so fun. Adding a sprint to go along with the dash does wonders for combat. It's fun to be a nimble little bug, dodging all the projectiles before running in to get a strike in. And the crests, I assume, offer a ton of variety to the way you use your needle. I wouldn't know, I use Reaper Crest the whole game. And even more so than the combat, the platforming is also fun as hell. My favorite segments of the game ended up being the Cogwort Core, Mount Fae, and the Path to Nameless Town. Their platforming challenges and pogoing off buzzsaws and grabbing onto hooks with your hookshot was hard, but really fun, and it's fun to move fluidly like that through a platforming challenge. Can you tell that White Palace was my favorite part of the original Hollow Knight? While the movement system is my favorite part of the game, I need to throw a nod to the world and lore. I'm not one to decipher the lore of games like this. I'd rather absorb it through like a Mossbag video. But even on a casual playthrough, I began to understand the lore and kind of made sense of it in my head, even if I only scratched the surface. Extra special shout out to Sherma, who served as the main motivation for me throughout the entire game. The game makes you care about Sherma. As long as you have basic reading ability, you'll piece at least some of the plot together, said the Undertale fan. The game's art also really helps with this, because engaging with the lore is optional, but the game rewards you by putting every little animation, every little art detail in the game into perspective. And even if I've only scratched the surface of the lore of Farloom, it still felt really rewarding to me when I did, more so than the rosary beads. The music is really good, and the art style is amazing as well, and they really sell the tragedy and the location you're in. I think that the set making that the art and music does wonders for the game, and makes it really fun. There's also a ton of things to do in the game. I really love that there's side quests now, and they really incentivize exploring Farloom in its own way, even if sometimes the rewards aren't worth it. Overall, Hollow Knight Silksong is an amazing game. Brutal, balls to the walls difficult, and it's got plenty of things that piss me off about it, but the good far outweighs the bad. It makes this game, like its predecessor, a standout in the Metroidvania genre. It's just a shame that I'm not as big of a fan as I wish I was of the genre as a whole. Monolith Soft really carried the Switch and Switch 2. I mean, it seems like they had a hand in every single late Switch game. It's shocking the amount of effort and work they put into the games they make, and so of course they land a spot on this list. Xenoblade Chronicles X takes the fantasy of Xenoblade and replaces it with sci-fi and mechs instead, and I think this makes Xenoblade X the most unique feeling Xenoblade of the bunch. It's shocking how much of the game is changed up by this. It's basically a mech anime at this point. This is also the first open world Xenoblade game, and the open world style fits the Xenoblade formula very well. There's so many side missions and so many things to do in the world, from finding mining spots to hunting creatures to taking on missions, that not doing the side content in Xenoblade X, or at least not doing a majority of the affinity missions, is an active disservice to your enjoyment of this game. My one complaint about the mission system, and my biggest complaint about the game, is the fact that you can't accept more than one affinity mission or story mission, and you can't quit a mission once you've started one. My worry was that I'd always be under-leveled for the mission I was currently on, and I'd be trapped in that mission, unable to do anything else. Luckily, the support missions in the online terminal makes grinding extremely easy, and you can easily make backup saves. I just feel that it feels a bit too restrictive for no reason. They also made this game's movement system so much more fun than any Xenoblade. Like, the fact that you can run and jump around, and that there's no fall damage, unlike the main series Xenoblades, makes exploring as a human fun. You run so fast and you jump so high, and I really liked that a lot about this game's movement system, except in Noctilum. Noctilum sucks. But what really changes the game is the Skells. While in battle, it was a little disappointing that the Skells played almost identical to being outside of the Skells. The Skells' out-of-battle capabilities make it more than worth it. It's so much fun to explore the world and drive around in your little transformer. And once you get the flight module, that's a magical experience taking off for the first time, and it really never gets old. I love stopping the boosters in midair and dropping to the ground at high speeds to get to where I need to go. And of course, the graphics and art style are some of the best on the Switch 1. The Xenoblade games push this little piece of plastic to its graphical limit, and while I typically don't care about more graphics, I can recognize that the game looks amazing when I see it. I just love looking at the art style of the world. Shout out to Sylvalum especially. The Xenoblade games have always aced the snow areas, and this game is no different. The music is absolute peak, despite it not being the regular series composers. Sawano brings a fresh style to the series that fits the changed aesthetic of the game. I never thought I'd hear actual rap in a Xenoblade game, but I love it. It's peak. It mixes vocals, electric guitar, and strings to create an awesome score that I love to listen to even outside the game. The music gets you excited for every single fight, every hype moment, and gets you ready to fight. I love it. As for the plot and story of the game, as well as the characters, I feel like the first bit of the story, there really isn't one, or at least it doesn't move as fast as I thought it would. Really, you learn a lot about the game and the world and the story just from doing the affinity missions, and that's where a lot of the story comes from. They're like their own mini-stories in and of themselves, and it's a unique way of telling a story that's based more on world building. I like this. Really though, Xenoblade X is the hype moments and aura game of the Xenoblade series. It would rather engage the player with cool fight scenes and awesome mech anime shit, rather than telling a good story. Which, don't get me wrong, the story's fine as it is, but I feel like it's more built around these hype moments. And sometimes that's a good thing, you know? Like, sometimes you need some hype moments and aura in your life. While the story isn't as compelling as other Xenoblade games, X is a lot more focused on exciting the player and getting them hyped for the next big fight. It works really well due to how good this game works and how Monolith is putting their whole mono wussy into these fight scenes. And again, that's not to say the story is bad, it's just more focused on these hype moments. The characters are also really good. I was a bit skeptical of this game having such a large cast, but each character is mostly relegated to their side stories, and that's fine. Some of my favorite characters ended up being Hope, and of course, my favorite lesbian, Liesel. Some of my favorite characters in the main story ended up being Lau and Lin. I really liked those two a lot. Especially Mr. Raw Slime in the series over here. This is also the only Xenoblade game with an avatar character. However, they are silent, and that kind of makes Elma the main character of the story, while meanwhile you're just along for the ride. But you do participate in plenty of hype moments, and the new section added for the Definitive Edition really draws a focus to the avatar character. It gives them more of a personality than the rest of the game combined. But really, it's just fun to run around as Kara Undertale in a big open world. Any game that lets me do that is a good game in my book. Xenoblade X is certainly unique from every other Xenoblade game. It's a bit rough around the edges, sure, but I'd say it's worth checking out because it's a fun time, and that's why it gets on the list. I'd love to see an X2 with the same gameplay and aesthetic. Please make it happen despite the game's poor sales numbers. As I've grown older, I tend to prefer games with deeper stories rather than games that focus on gameplay. I can still appreciate good gameplay, but it's a good story that sticks with me forever rather than the gameplay. That being said, it's good to chill out with some good old fun nowadays and not focus on a deep story at all. I can appreciate a game that does that, such as this entry on the list. Donkey Kong Bonanza is a Nintendo game, and one in the Mario adjacent universe at that. I'm not expecting some sort of deep story or anything like that. What you see is what you get with this game, a fun monkey romp through several worlds collecting bananas. It's fine that this game doesn't have much of a story, and the gameplay more than makes up for it. But the main reason this game isn't higher on the list is because games with a good story really stick in my mind more than games with good gameplay. This game is basically like junk food. You eat it, it's good, it's tasty, but you don't remember it, and it doesn't stick in your mind at all. But just like anyone else, I could go for some junk food every once in a while, and goddamn is Donkey Kong Bonanza some tasty junk food. My favorite aspect about this game is that it knows exactly how to feed the gamer tingle. The gamer tingle is a phenomenon that I've experienced after years of playing games where I, as a gamer, just sense something based on intuition. Like, it's that feeling you get when you see a waterfall in the game and you know that there's something behind it. And this game rewards that gamer tingle over and over and over again. It seems like if your intuition is telling you that a game is hiding a banana or a fossil or something somewhere, then that place will likely have one there. That gives me a sense of satisfaction, like, yes, I was right kind of emotion after successfully predicting that a banana would be in the spot I thought it'd be. The levels in the game are expertly crafted to give you that gamer tingle wherever you go and reward you for acting upon it. Of course, that wouldn't be nearly as fun if Donkey Kong's core moveset wasn't also expertly crafted, and I can say that it definitely is. It's so fun to run, climb, jump, and destroy the environment as DK. Just like in Mario Odyssey, it's fun to string different moves together and pull off trick jumps to reach places you probably aren't supposed to go to yet. And while I prefer Mario Odyssey's movement system, this game makes up for it with the terrain destruction, which can allow you to navigate the world around you in so many more creative ways. This game is also extremely charming, and that's mostly thanks to Donkey Kong himself. DK is so expressive in this game, even in the littlest animations, and it just brings life to this character that he's never seen before. It's charming to watch his antics as the game goes on, as well as how he reacts to things. He has a very just happy to be here attitude that just puts a smile on your face. So yeah, I guess you could say that this Kong has a funny face. I was a bit hesitant on the DK redesign in Mario Kart World. I had really preferred the rare DK design that the franchise had been using for so long, but Bonanza really sold me on this new look for the leader of the bunch. This likely wouldn't be possible without the Switch 2 graphics, making DK and the rest of the world seem more alive than ever, without going for that realism slop that most AAA games go for. It's cartoony, while still looking good at the same time. And of course, the music is all bangers. It's the Mario sound team, of course it's bangers. From both the new songs as well as arrangements of some of the series' best, it's just fun to listen to the music, while also setting itself apart far enough from Mario and being distinctly Donkey Kong, while still exuding the whimsy that Mario Odyssey soundtrack brought to the table. And finally, this game is a true love letter to Donkey Kong fans. It brings back the main cast, such as Diddy, Dixie, and Cranky, and it also just has love letters to the original game, not just in musical form, but also whole levels dedicated to Donkey Kong Country games. I had never played through the Country games. I only got to the second world of Donkey Kong Country 1 on the Wii Virtual Console as a kid before I forgot all about it. But I'm still a sucker for nostalgia, even for games I've never played. When you go to the left in the Jungle Japes level and you find a recreation of DK's treehouse from the original game, as well as a hidden banana, that's a moment that evokes nostalgia and also tickles that gamer tingle for those who remember the treehouse there in the original game. That was a really nice moment. What? Were you expecting me to talk about something else? Yeah, I can't talk about nostalgia without mentioning the grand return of King K. Rool. I genuinely thought his stint in Smash was going to be a one-and-done deal, and he'd fade into obscurity again after that. Maybe he'd have a little reference in Bonanza, but he wouldn't show up himself, absolutely not. But no, he is here, and so is the entire Kremlin crew. They were faithfully translated into 3D, and they look just like they did in Donkey Kong Country. It's really amazing. You can see the love that Nintendo had for the rare Donkey Kong Country games when they made this segment. This segment seriously plays out like some sort of Nintendo fanfiction from the biggest fanboy. K. Rool punches the main villain away and takes his powers and becomes the final boss of the game. You kick his ass and it looks like you've won, but then the game hits you with the fake credits thing that happened all the way back in Donkey Kong Country 1. K. Rool wakes up and chases after you in his helicopter that he had both in Donkey Kong Country 3 and in Smash Bros. All while a glorious remix of Gangplank Galleon is playing in the background. You wind up in New Donk City, which K. Rool then proceeds to Aura Farm on top of the New Donk City Hall, and he uses the magical MacGuffin to reshape the city in his own image. So you climb up New Donk City just for K. Rool to summon a goddamn boxing ring, just like in Donkey Kong 64, copy the protagonist's abilities and get a form of his own, and then you proceed to punch him to death. It's just holy peak, man. Back when I finished Danganronpa Memories, I planned on not returning to the Fangin space. I felt that I had done all I could with Danganronpa and wanted to move on. I felt like I could tell other stories not restricted to the Danganronpa formula. I had run the idea dry. To be plain, I was tired of it, so I planned to quietly make my exit from the space. However, fate had different plans. Okay, technically I played this one last year, but I did play it after I had finished recording the top 10 video of that year, which qualifies it for this year in my opinion. Chapter 1 of Project Eden's Garden is so good, it reignited my love and passion for the Danganronpa formula. It taught me that there were more ways to expand on Danganronpa. Basically, it's the main reason Under Rampa Yellow exists. The presentation and gameplay is exactly what you'd expect from Danganronpa. It feels like an official Danganronpa game if they swapped out the psychopop aesthetic for a classical biblical aesthetic. This new aesthetic breathes new life into the Danganronpa play area. The gameplay during the trials is mainly what you'd expect, until you get to the fucking Toho minigame, which was so much fun, but also difficult as hell on higher difficulties, and it caught me by surprise, because in the actual Danganronpa games, even on mean, it's not that difficult. But the main draw of Eden's Garden is its characters. The characters are fucking stellar. Having a protagonist that's an unapologetic asshole is such a breath of fresh air when compared to the mainline Danganronpa games, where while Makoto, Hajime, and Shuichi are different, they do feel somewhat samey at times. Having a character like Damon, who is on the outside of the group from the beginning and is actively disliked by many characters, and having them double down on their assholishness at the end of the chapter is fucking amazing. I can't wait to see where they go with this character. Damon breathes new life into the Danganronpa formula in a way I've never seen a single character do. I feel like he is one of the main reasons that Eden's Garden feels as unique as it does, and yet, he isn't even my favorite character in the game. That honor belongs to the culprit of the case, Eva Tsunaka. She is probably the most realistic Danganronpa culprit I've ever seen in any Danganronpa fan project. Like, she is how most of us would react if we were trapped in a killing game. She has so many tragic layers to her character that's so fun to pick apart. She's tragic in such a real way that hits close to home. You feel for her and you just wonder where things went wrong with her and if anyone could have done anything to help her. Cassidy ended up being one of my favorite characters in the game as well, just due to how funny she is. And all of the characters are good, if not great. There isn't a single character I hate. Even Kai, I just hate him for the meme. I don't actually hate him, he's pretty well written. I just like calling him Dream because it's funny. The murder case itself is extremely fun to solve as well. It's engaging throughout and keeps you on your toes while also feeling like an amazing starter trial and that things can only build from here. But what's really unique about it is the victim and the culprit. Going by traditional Danganronpa formula, I pegged Wolfgang as the antagonist role and Eva as the support role, and thus predicted them both as Chapter 5 deaths, a la the antagonists and supports in both Danganronpa 2 and V3. Whatever they were, the two of them seemed very important to the story, and the last thing I expected was for both of them to die Chapter 1. This really shook things up and told me that for fangirls, the Danganronpa formula doesn't need to be followed, and it's unique to switch things up. I love that about Project Eden's Garden, and it makes it feel so unique compared to Danganronpa, and that's why it gets this high on the list. It breathed new life into the Danganronpa formula and reignited that spark that makes me love creating fangirls in the first place. Danganronpa, yeah! I'm mostly kidding about the Danganronpa stuff, by the way. While 100 Line is derivative of Danganronpa, taking elements such as its art style and music, which isn't a bad thing, by the way. The music is really good and the art style is really good. This game does so much that just calling it Danganronpa Fire Emblem is a disservice to what this game actually is. Batshit fucking insane. The fact that this game has 100 different endings spread over a million different choices is something I've never seen a video game do before, and these aren't cheap bad endings. Even the ones that are simple choices like do this instead of that, you die, bring something new to the table, or foreshadow something on a different route, and are fleshed out endings in and of themselves. The amount of content and different ideas that are jam-packed into the different routes of this game is an insane task. Apparently, this game's script is long enough to print 60 paperback novels. And it's not just repeat ideas, each route has new ideas that it brings to the table and branch off in wildly different directions. On one route, you might be solving murder mysteries. Another route could be a wholesome coming-of-age story. And then the next moment, you're hiding from actual zombies. We don't talk about the Cult of Takumi route. There's so many ideas that this game crams into one package that you always have something new thrown at you no matter where in the story you are. Hell, the fucking prologue is 30 hours, and that's before you even get to make a single choice. The quote-unquote main plot, the one where you uncover all the truths about the story, could have been its own game in and of itself. It's low-key one of my favorite Kodaka stories in any game he's written, and that's saying a lot because I might be the only person who likes the plot of Danganronpa. Don't get me wrong, like Danganronpa, 100 Line is flawed, but there's something about it that makes me look past its flaws and love its main plot, flaws and all. One of my favorite aspects of the main plot is how this game does Danganronpa V3's ending better than Danganronpa V3. I'll always be a V3 ending defender, but I will admit that the game muddled its own message with the whole Danganronpa's fake plot twist. This main route's big plot twist, that all the characters' memories were implanted in them to give them a reason to fight, gives flashbacks, pun intended, to Danganronpa V3's ending. However, instead of it feeling like a gotcha towards the player, which V3's ending tends to do for a lot of people, this game can hone in on the message of their memories mattering to each other despite just being fictional, that I believe was part of what V3's ending was going for, without feeling like such an attack on the player. And of course, a story is no good without good characters, and this game absolutely delivers. These characters are malleable enough to serve different roles and do drastically different things throughout each route while still feeling like themselves for the most part. Dare I say, this is the best Kodaka cast as a package. I prefer some characters in Danganronpa more, like Kaede, but there's not any character that I outright hate, like Teruteru, Hifumi, etc. Even Ima, my least favorite character in the game, as much as I like to joke around and call him Incest Boy, isn't an awful character. He has his moments. And even though I'm not as attached to these characters as much as I am some of Danganronpa's, I can't deny that these characters are bangers. We've got Nagito 3 over here, our favorite Het Gem Slop character, who gives me Kaede vibes and is just so wholesome. A self-referential manic pixie dream girl who always makes jokes about wanting to be in a killing game and all that, but despite that has one of my favorite backstories in the game, and Mother. Furthermore, since there's just so much content in the game, no character really gets thrown to the wayside, unlike, half the Danganronpa cast. Each get their chance to be fleshed out in a different route. As a package, this cast is better than other games, but I don't think it hits as high highs as Danganronpa. And despite being a Kodaka game, I was shocked at how, for want of a better word, woke this game is. Toxic Yaoi, Toxic Yuri, a wholesome and functioning polycule, a character making a goddamn egg joke, and a plot about colonialism that unequivocally paints the colonists as the oppressors. This game is actually dark woke and its peak. My favorite route ended up being the killing game route. The relationships between the characters were just so interesting and I loved every second of it. It filled me with so much emotion, both happy and sad, and I really wanted to see where the killing game polycule went after the ending. It was just an amazing route altogether that shone light on every single character and made them all amazing. It also completely flipped my opinion on Tsubasa as a character, going from a meh character to top 3 in the game. She's just so fun to watch and sweet that you can't just help but like her. That whole kiss Takumi to take half of his sins so he doesn't have to bear the guilt alone thing was so corny but also cute, I almost cried. I love Het Gem. Every happy moment in this route felt earned. After all the trauma and struggles the cast went through, you just want to see them happy and accomplish their dreams, which makes it all the more sweet when they actually do. I do have one glaring issue with this game, however. I have never played this magnitude of a game for so many hours and felt like I've been getting nowhere. Having 100 different endings in the game is an insane accomplishment, but it can feel like a gigantic task, and playing so much for so long can really tire you out, given that certain endings can take up to 30 hours. I have 104 hours in this game and only have 18 out of the 100 endings. But that's my only issue with this game, and really, it's just an issue with my mindset. Pace yourself with this one, take breaks, and you'll have fun with this. You ever have a game that just touches your heart in just the right way? It doesn't have to be a pinnacle of game design or amazing artistry, but it just touches your heart perfectly in a way that you become immediately enamored with it. For me, that game this year was a little indie game called Stars in Time is an RPG Maker game. As such, the gameplay isn't very interesting. To be honest, it can be a bit repetitive. Going up the tower over and over isn't fun, and the game slogs a bit in the middle. The normal enemy battles especially are not fun, and they get to be super repetitive, although that might be the point due to the story. The art style is fun and unique, don't get me wrong, I love how they make the world and the characters look so fun with no color at all. I love that there's a lore explanation for the lack of color, and then at the very end, color shows up and it's like some crazy, unreal thing. But the novelty of the monochrome art style kind of wears off in the middle of the game, and you forget that it's a unique thing until the color shows up at the end. But damn it, I don't care, because this game's story and emotional weight is more than enough to carry it all the way to this spot on the list. This game has the most interesting take on the time loop formula in any piece of fiction ever. This game takes the time loop formula of storytelling, and instead of focusing on the loop itself, it places an emphasis on the characters. I think that brings new life to the time loop formula that I haven't really seen in many other pieces of fiction. The characters are really where this game shines. Each one of the 5 main heroes are fleshed out to the max, and you spend a lot of time with each of them, getting to know them, caring about them. You can sense that they all are growing despite the loop, and they grow more and more each time you go through. Instead of the characters changing due to the time loop, you learn more and more about them over the course of the game, and that gives them character arcs despite being in a loop and not knowing it. The best character in the game, of course, is the protagonist Siffrin. He is the one under the effects of the time loop, and it is genuinely the most realistic depiction of how one would react to a time loop normally. You can see how the different aspects of the time loop have an effect on Siffrin, making him view his friends as simple actors who just repeat their lines. The idea of a game being a stage play and Siffrin is just playing his part over and over is a very interesting way to explain how the time loop feels for Siffrin. I like that metaphor. You can feel Siffrin getting less and less attached emotionally to everything going on because he knows that everything will repeat no matter what. You can feel his desperation in every line he speaks. You can feel him going more and more insane with the more loops you go through. It's the most accurate and character-focused portrayal of a time loop in fiction. It makes it so that when Siffrin hurts his friends later in the game or does awful things, instead of being mad at him, you just feel bad. The game also has a plethora of secrets. The game takes the Undertale fun value idea and turns it up to 11. There's so many hidden interactions that require either luck or performing specific actions between loops in order to get, and there's so many side quests, side content, and little things to do throughout the game that build on the story and the characters. I even missed the hidden super boss and ending because it's just that cryptic to find. One scene that really stuck out to me was the confession scene, in which Sifrin has to travel to the same spot over and over and over to get people to stop interrupting Isabeau, who has been trying to confess their love for Sifrin at the end of the adventure every time. However, after he does this, Sifrin starts to feel guilty about himself, feeling like he's manipulating their friends in order to get a desired result and messing with time to get Isabeau to do something he doesn't want to. You can feel Sifrin's self-deprecation, and that really stuck with me, because really feeling these awful things that you say about yourself are true is a struggle I deal with all the time. It really struck a chord with me. Of course, the music is all bangers. It is amazing, despite being mostly chiptune, how much this game makes the chiptune music style sound good. But my favorite part of the game is the ending, where it's revealed that the one who created the time loop was Sifrin himself, unknowingly. He did this because he was worried that their time with their friends would end and they would all split up after the adventure, so they unknowingly created the time loop in order to ensure they could spend time together forever. Feeling like you're going to lose someone important to you, worrying that your closest friends and family are going to abandon you the first chance they get, is something I think a lot of people deal with. It comes from this place of self-deprecation and thinking that you're not enough for them. In Stars in Time takes this to its logical extreme and creates a scenario in which Sifrin forces his friends to stay with him because of this fear of them leaving him. But the truth is, even if it's hard to believe sometimes, the people close to you will never truly forget about you. You leave impacts on people's lives, and they will remember you. Even if you grow physically apart, you'll always be in each other's hearts. You, as a person, matter to the world, and matter to the people around you, and that's a message that really hit home for me. This beautiful ending, this heartwarming ending, is why In Stars in Time is this high on the list. However, there's one game that beats it out. 2025 had a lot of great games. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with each and every one, but I debated making this video entirely because take a look at my channel, take one look at my personality, take one look at my legal name. This list had number 1 locked in before it even started. While this game didn't make me cry or feel as emotional as previous games in the list, which makes sense because it's not the full story, Deltarune more than makes up for it with everything else. Gameplay, music, presentation, and yes, even the story. The story, while only being a piece of the entire game, is really compelling for what it is, and it builds a lot upon the previous characters and chapters in fascinating and unique ways. My favorite character ended up being Susie, as she became more fleshed out and became sort of like the main character of the entire game, even more so than Chris. Like, she became sort of the center point of the plot, with everything from the secret bosses to the character arcs, to everything just focusing on her. And I really enjoyed how her character grew over the course of these 2 chapters. The other characters are great too. Ralsei is as mysterious and sussy as ever, while still being the soft, fluffy boy we love. Tenna is yet another Tumblr sexy man to add to the deranged Toby Fox Tumblr sexy man pile. Every line that comes out of his mouth is enjoyable and funny as hell, while also still being a deep character. All the rest of the characters, especially those returning from Undertale, are fun and enjoyable as well. It's always fun to check up on old favorites in Hometown or meet brand new characters in the Dark World. The dialogue is as enjoyable as ever, striking the perfect balance between funny jokes and serious moments, knowing when to play up one or the other, and I found myself laughing so much, while also being engaged with the deeper and darker moments of the plot the next moment. The The gameplay is fun as hell, it's still the same Deltarune you know and love. Tons of hidden secret areas, hidden dialogue, and the game taking into account everything the player might possibly do. For example, there's a big piano in Chapter 4 and you can play it. Of course, there's one song that you must play on every piano in any video game ever, so you go to do that and... The amount of secrets, especially in Chapter 3, can get a bit cryptic, even some requiring you to play really well in the game and requiring you to reset to get a better rank and play that section again. I didn't have a real problem with these rank requirements though, because I'm just that good at video games. The battles in Chapter 3 and 4 are some of the most unique battles in the history of both Undertale and Deltarune, and do so many unique things with the battle system that I just loved. Sometimes you'd be playing WarioWare microgames, or in another battle you'd have to run away from a pumpkin in a maze, or things like that. Green Soul. The bullet patterns are hard but fair, and if you can learn them, you can master them, even with the Knight, the hardest boss in the game, hands down. The presentation is off the charts. Having a full team for the game really helped Deltarune. The art does so many unique and amazing things that just look stunning. The visuals are beautiful despite the game being pixel art style, and it's amazing how we went from Undertale's ruins to Chapter 4, probably the best looking chapter by far. And dude, the music! I mean, this is Toby Fox we're talking about. Of course, every damn track is a banger. Once again, he cooked so hard and produced some of the best songs in gaming, period. While none beat Asgore from Undertale as my favorite Toby Fox song, here's praying that we get a remix in it for the Asgore boss in Chapter 5, they're all incredible tracks in their own right, with masterful uses of leitmotifs and amazing melodies. Some of my favorite tracks were Hammer of Justice, The Third Sanctuary, Black Knife, TV World, and From Now On. But the real reason this gets to be number one is the hype and mystery factor. The amount of times I popped off at this game is insane. I went crazy for the unveil of every new plot point. Deltarune was one of the most theorized games in my opinion, and the one I was most into. I was fully into the friend inside me brain rot, just like any other hardcore fan of the game. And despite all that, despite all of the theories and us feeling so right about the direction the game was going to go, Toby Fox still surprised me at every single turn. However, he didn't just say all of your theories are wrong, goodbye. He also fulfilled a lot of the mysteries we had, or at least hinted towards them, with the usage of image depth throughout Chapter 4 and even being the inside of the Titan. I've never had a game debunk so many theories, yet confirm so many others at the same time, and I popped off at every new development the game threw at me. These were my favorite moments in the game, the moments where I was excited. The image friend reveal at the very start of Chapter 3, the Titan reveal in subsequent battle, and especially the Knight fight that just came out of nowhere and was fucking incredible. I did not expect to see the Knight this early in the game. And the fact that some of the Knight's attacks are the type of shit you would see in a 2016 Fan and Chara battle is just fucking insane to me. It's like Toby Fox saw the shit that fans were doing with Fan and Chara and said, you know, I can't make an actual fight with Chara, but I'll do my best, and this is the closest we'll get. It just warms my heart as Chara IRL. And dude, the Gerson fight? Like, I've been wanting a Gerson fight since Undertale. I think Gerson's a super underrated character, and that's why I added him to Underrampa Yellow. I've been waiting for this, and I popped off so hard at that. I even popped off for smaller things, like the Freedom motif playing, or it using the Green Soul. And of course, in confirming so many new mysteries, the game also leaves a lot tantalizingly open, just feeling like we got our finger on the pulse of it, but it's just out of reach. I genuinely have no idea where the story goes from here because we got so much wrong between chapters 2 and 3, it feels like the story can go anywhere. It also sets up a ton of new mysteries as well and gives us a ton of more to theorize about and go crazy about while we wait for the new chapters. For example, what is Chris's deal? What is the end of the prophecy and why is it so terrible? What is that silly Wingaster man planning? We don't even know the Knight's motives, or even who they are for sure. Yes! Deltarune doesn't solve all our questions, and I really like that. It gives us so much more to talk about as a fandom, and for that reason, for setting up the most compelling ongoing mysteries and being incredibly exciting, retaining my attention the whole time, Deltarune is number 1 on this list. It's just an amazing package that I loved playing through and an enjoyable time the whole way. Can't wait for Chapter 5 to be number 1 on my list for 2026.